Time is now 12:50. I would like to call the October 19th, 2023 meeting of the Energy Facility Siting Council to order. Mr. Secretary, please call the roll.
Marcy Grail,
Here.
Kent Howe,
Here.
Cindy Condon,
Here.
Perry Chalktoot, Ann Byer,
Here.
Richard Devlin.
Here.
Madam Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Mr. Secretary, are there any agenda modifications?
Madam Chair, there are no agenda modifications at this time.
Thank you. I have the following announcements. Comment registration cards for today's hearing and agenda item C, public comment, are available on the table in the back of the room. For council members and anyone addressing the council, please remember to state your name clearly and please do not use the speakerphone feature as it will create feedback. Please mute your phones, and if you are joining us by phone or receive a phone call, please hang up from this call and dial back in after finishing your other call. For those signed onto the webinar, please do not broadcast your webcam. If you want to receive future email notifications of council meetings, project milestones, or rulemakings through our Click Dimensions program, you can do so by clicking on the link in the agenda or on the council webpage. Look for the green box on the right-hand side of the page that says Sign up for emails updates. You are also welcome to access the online project mapping tool and any documents by visiting our website. Please note that the audio and video of this meeting is being recorded and may be posted to the council's website following the meeting. Energy Facility Siting Council meetings shall be conducted in a respectful and courteous manner where everyone is allowed to state their positions at the appropriate times consistent with council rules and procedures. Willful, accusatory, offensive, insulting, threatening, insolent, or slanderous comments which disrupt the council meeting are not acceptable. Pursuant to Oregon Administrative Rule 345-011-0080, any person who engages in unacceptable conduct which disrupts the meeting may be expelled. Our first agenda item is approval of the minutes. And I would ask, did everyone have an opportunity to review the minutes? Are there any comments about the minutes?
Chair Grail,
Yes?
Councillor Condon here. I had some computer issues, so I did not review the minutes and we could put them to next meeting. That would be helpful, or I'll abstain.
We have a request from thank you, Councilmember Condon, to hold off on voting on the approval of these minutes. And if there's no objection from council or Mr. Secretary, I would ask that we hold these off until next meeting.
Madam Chair, I made note of that. We will include that on the November agenda.
Thank you. Then the next item would be the council secretary report. Mr. Secretary.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll first start with staffing updates. So we have initiated the recruitment process to replace Wally Adams. He position is the Operations and Policy Analyst 2. So we just, it was Tuesday maybe. So it was earlier this week that the notice went out. So we'll probably be, in that 5 to 6 week time frame. So I'll keep council members updated on that progress. Next, I will get into some project updates. So the first is the Yellow Rosebush Energy Center. So, you can go back. A notice of intent was submitted on September 1st by Yellow Rosebush Energy Center LLC, which is a wholly owned subsidiary of Savion LLC for the Yellow Rosebush Energy Center. The project is a proposed solar PV generation facility with a capacity of 800 megawatts and related and supporting facilities on 8,075 acres, so 12.6 square miles, on privately owned land zoned for exclusive farm use in both Wasco and Sherman counties. The majority of it is in Wasco County, but the transmission line would go over into Sherman County. The department issued a public notice last week. You should have gotten that notice as well. This is for the notice of intent. We've established a public information meeting on the evening of November 2nd in Maupin. And there is currently an open comment period that will conclude on December 1st. If there's any questions, go on to the next update. The next is the Umatilla-Morrow County Connector Project. Similarly, we received the notice of intent in mid-September on the 13th by Umatilla Electric Cooperative for this project. They are the project applicant. Project is a proposed 14-mile, 230 kV transmission line with portions located in both Morrow and Umatilla County. Just as a reminder, the threshold for FSEC jurisdiction on transmission lines is at least 230 kV, more than 10 miles, and in more than one jurisdiction. So it's not greatly over that, but it is over that. And so it is your jurisdiction. So the department also issued a public notice last week on the notice of intent, and we're combining this public information meeting. This one will be on the evening of November 1st, and that will be in Boardman, and then the next night will be the one for the Yellow Rose Bush. And similarly, there is a open public comment period that will conclude on December 1st. So we're just at the notice of intent stage for both projects, just getting the word out for people. So we'll start to receive thoughts and comments and concerns from the public, from reviewing agencies over the next 60 days. Now, if you could move this slide, please, Nancy. The next, I have a compliance update. So this is and my apologies for anybody who's probably listening to me. I'm sure I'm going to not pronounce this correctly. Pacheco Fields Solar Energy Facility. So if you recall, this is the formerly known as Montag Solar. So this is the one that you passed driving down to Arlington. The last time we went to, Condon, excuse me. The last time we went to the city of Condon, there was the one facility that was recently built. It's that facility. So it is operating. Earlier this year, it went into operation. It's in Gillum County. It's 162 megawatts. It commenced operation in April. On October 17th, so just 2 days ago, we received notice that there was an MC4 electrical connector fire. So I had to ask, what does that mean? So an MC4 is basically sort of a connector point between cables. And so for some reason that sparked a fire. It was put out rather quickly, did not cause any damage. But we had the exact same incident in August. There was an MC4 fire. Again, it was found and put out very quickly, but this is of concern, particularly since many solar facilities do not, in the long term, have on-site personnel. A wind facility will have an operations and maintenance facility. They'll have people doing maintenance all the time on the wind turbines. Solar facilities, again, probably depending on the size, will not. So this currently does have personnel because it's still early in operation. And some point in time, it will not. So this is a bit of concern that we're seeing two fires caused by the same issue within a couple of months of each other.
Secretary Cornett, could I ask just real quick, are the MC4 connections above ground or are they on the ground?
Yes, thank you, Vice Chair Howe, for the question. They are above ground. So if not very far, at least in the pictures that we saw, I'm not an engineer, I'm not familiar. I just was looking at the pictures recently, which is the only thing that I know about. And so it seemed to be, at least from the picture, a couple of feet maybe above ground. And so you have kind of cabling that kind of goes up, and then it's almost like a distributor cap, like multiple wires connecting into the central point. And then that connects up into the solar panel itself. At least that's what it appeared on the photo. So yes, it is in fairly close proximity to the ground, and it is above ground. Councilmember Condon. Sorry,
Thank you.
Chair Grail, I don't know how well you can see everybody. I'm happy to call on people, or I'm happy to let you do it. Whatever is easier
No,
for you.
thank you, Secretary Cornett. Yes, please do. Thank you.
Thank you. Just I think I understood the second one, or both of them were at the same place. And is the MC4 electrical connector common throughout
Yeah.
solar facilities, or is this one unusual in some?
My understanding is it's common and, you know, and I just asked the question myself. Yes, and at least with this facility, I assume it's the same with others, but I can't guarantee that because I didn't ask the question, but there are probably thousands of them because of the, you know, size of the facility, the acreage size of the facility and the number of panels.
And so, not that we know this, but if someone at a facility or someone at a facility that was totally unattended, that's been installed for a while, could a fire have developed and we just nobody knows about it? You know, could they have been going on for some time but
It's a
they
good
don't
question.
start fires?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. And, you know, all of these facilities have essentially, and I assume it's for solar, it's the same as a wind, but a SCADA system, basically.
Yeah.
The monitoring system to make sure things are running correctly. And if something doesn't occur, some, you know, sort of element trips and then makes, you know, somebody who's watching, you know, one facility or multiple facilities remotely, that alerts them. They can actually call somebody very quickly, you know, to get on it. But I don't know what the time frame would be. That's something that I think we need to look into to figure out, you know, if and when a fire occurs in the same circumstances, what happens?
Yeah.
Exactly what happens? How does the alert happen? You know, what's the timing of if there are no on-site personnel or, you know, local fire officials to be able to respond?
Thank you.
And these just happened, you know, one incident, you know, your beginning, you know, operation, gonna have to work through the kinks, get that, you know, these are big industrial facilities and there are a lot of components. You know, I think the bigger concern is if we start to see a pattern and what are the potential implications associated with that pattern.
Thank you.
Right. Next on my list is the Trojan Independent Spent Fuel Storage Installation Security Plan Update. Okay. Can anybody repeat that? So if you can go back, I'm not quite there yet. Thanks. No, I appreciate that. So under Oregon Revised Statute 469-530, the council and the director of the Department of Energy, so Jeannie Benner, must review and approve all security programs attendant to a nuclear fueled thermal power plant, which includes security programs for the independent spent fuel storage installation, which I'll just say ISFAC at this point. So in this case, it's at the former Trojan nuclear power plant. So, you know, as we've talked about before, the facility is entirely decommissioned. You know, any remaining hazardous materials are in casks on site, and they have safety and security plans. You have some responsibility for, you know, kind of keeping an eye on that. The department does, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission does as well. So on September 19th, the department received notice from Portland General Electric that they had submitted revision 9 of that ISFAC security plan for the facility to the Nuclear Regulatory Commission because it includes confidential safeguards, which is, think about it as, you know, basically secure information that needs to be kind of sequestered and not made available to the public. Because it includes that kind of information, we need to review that. We need to review it on behalf of the council. We need to review it on behalf of the director. But it's awkward to bring that material here. And so our desire is to send somebody up to the site in Columbia County for them to review the materials and look at the changes. And so based on the documentation that we've received, which is just a summary of it, it appears that the revisions fall into 3 categories. The first is incorporating administrative updates to reflect operational and personnel changes at the site, adding verbiage that included the amended rules that were adopted by council in 2021, and updating drawings and processes to reflect enhanced security features installed at the site. So I don't want to minimize these, but they're at a lower level. It's not at least our understanding, is not a significant change or modification. The documentation also states that Portland General Electric evaluated the modifications to the plan and determined that they did not decrease the effectiveness of the plan, and as a result did not require prior approval from the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. So because, again, going back to the confidential safeguards, we want somebody from the department to go up and look at that. And so I'm requesting that the council appoint Mark Reese, the department's radiological emergency planning coordinator with the Nuclear Safety and Emergency Preparedness Division, who works for Max, who's here today, to inspect the plan at the ISFSI site in Columbia County and report back to the council and the director. Now, perfect. If you agree, then if you agree with this and appoint Mr. Reese, then he and Tom Romay, who is the plant manager at that site, would come back to council at a future meeting and provide an overview, that's available for public consumption on what those modifications are for your review and possibly approval of that. There also had been recently, we've been made aware of a drone incursion into the airspace over the ISFSI. And so we would ask Mr. Romay to provide some update on that as well. Obviously, drones are a much more prevalent thing now, but you have, sort of a secure site. So there are some concerns, about what are the potential implications of that. Yes. Councilmember Byer.
Madam Chair, and this is a question for Secretary Cornett. Has the Nuclear Regulatory Commission agreed with PGE that they don't need to review it, or can they ask to review it?
This is something we'll have to follow up on. I believe that they are fine with it, and that if they had any concerns, they could ask, but we'll have to clarify that all later on. I don't know. Patrick, if you recall the details of that.
Didn't you just say that?
Well, the PGE said that they didn't need to be reviewed by, because of the types of changes. Max, if you have more details, Max, please come on up. So Max and his team have been part of this review as well.
Well, I'm here.
Since he's here.
And I know a little bit about this, and there's things we probably will learn as we go on, and some things I won't. Am I live? Is the mic open?
Yep, you're good.
Okay. Thank you for having me. Max Woods, Assistant Director for Nuclear Safety and Emergency Preparedness. So there was two, as we understand, there was two reasons why PGE made changes. Well, there's three reasons why PGE made changes to its plan. One of those reasons was because in 2022, the NRC staff did an inspection of their facility and have directed changes be made to that plan based on NRC recommendations. The second part was, as Todd mentioned, some administrative changes. And I think the third part of it was PGE's own changes based on perhaps council's rule changes, sort of this dual authority over that site between the federal government and the state. So there's a couple of reasons why those changes were made. The NRC has received a copy of the updated plan. And what I have actually pulled up here was an email. Maybe I should just take a step back. In my job, I am Oregon's state liaison officer to the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. That's a position that comes with the job that I hold. And so I have a liaison contact at the NRC that I can talk to on an occasional basis about these types of things. His name is Ryan Alexander. And he's told me that the NRC is in the process of reviewing the plan right now. The changes based on the rules of the NRC, I think, Todd, you mentioned this. PGE is allowed to make certain types of security changes if PGE itself determines that they do not decrease the effectiveness of the security plan. That's allowed by the NRC rule. That said, the NRC will still, trust but verify on that type of a report. So like many government administrative agencies, the NRC is a little slower to respond to some of these changes when they're not a higher priority. So they have not yet made and I think it was just in August when this updated plan was submitted. They haven't yet finalized their review of the plan to confirm what I would expect them to do would be confirm that the changes that they expected to see based on that audit from 2022 were in fact done, as well as additional changes that PGE was proposing to confirm that they in fact did not decrease the effectiveness of that plan. So that's still forthcoming. I don't know exactly when that will be done. I can try and get some more clarity on the schedule if it is important for you to do the review at the same time, although you could probably still have Mark do his inspection, his review, report back to you. And then at another time, when we do have information from the NRC, we could also report back as you see fit. That's probably more than you were asking for, but glad to help out.
Thank you for the information, Max. This is Marcy, and I'm sorry I don't get to say hi to you.
Oh, glad to help. Thanks, Marcy.
Yeah, just for the record, this is Counselor Byer. I just wanted to get a feel for whether our Nuclear Regulatory Commission had sort of said, go ahead, do your thing, but it sounds like it's a dual track.
It's a dual track. Yeah, the NRC's focus, the NRC regulates commercial operating nuclear reactors in the country. At operating reactors, they have on-site inspectors that are NRC employees but work at the facilities. So at the Columbia Generating Station in Washington State, there's on-site inspection professionals from the NRC, but who work at the site. It's a little bit different at these decommissioned facilities, the Trojan Isthmus. So I think their level of review is probably commensurate with maybe the risk profile that they would consider from that site. Their timeline accordingly.
But
Councilmember
Condon.
I don't know who's calling.
Councilmember Condon.
Thank you. Cindy Condon for the record. What I understand is, so we'd have somebody go up, inspect. If there's disagreement, if Mark comes back and says, you know, I disagree with the assessment of PGE, is that a route that would?
Good question. I think in that scenario, and this is, I have not come across that scenario. If that was the case, I think the first thing we would probably want to do is talk to our NRC colleagues and say, here's what we have found. What do you think, NRC? Remember that you do have authority to regulate that site for safety, security reasons, as does the NRC. So yes, it is possible, would have to perhaps look to Patrick, that there are, you know, conflicting recommendations from an agency or decisions, I guess, as to what the security protocols and levels should be in place, meaning between the state and the feds. I hope that wouldn't be the case, but I think it is perhaps possible. I wouldn't anticipate that's going to happen here, but no. So the very first thing we would do is perhaps get the NRC to talk with us and kind of understand what our thinking was.
Thank you. And what prompts that question is I certainly don't know Mark Reese or what his experience is. And so what is the inspection for? Is that part of it to rest assured that, nope, we agree with PGE, you know, it doesn't have to go to the NRC. It was the extent of his review, I guess, that not.
To me, he would be, and Todd, maybe you can jump in if you have some additional
Go ahead.
thoughts. He would be looking at the changes from the previous iteration of the security plan and verifying in his mind whether the rationale as to why those changes were made and what in practice those new changes would mean for safety and security at the site. And perhaps we haven't worked this out with PGE yet, but I would like to, perhaps the easiest way to do this would be simply to look at a changed version of the previous plan, a red line perhaps, and to say, okay, this is what's changed and here's why, and have the PGE staff walk through with Mark what's changed and why to help him inform that decision.
And just to go back, I'm gonna, as I'd indicated, Mark's title is Radiological Emergency Planning Coordinator. So his experience with this, he's seen the plans before. He's very familiar with the site. So we, the department, it's going to be your choice, but we, the department, feel that he's the right person from the department to go do this.
I would agree.
Yeah, thanks. And I figured that, but it was just the extent of the review as part of it, that check to make sure we agree with PGE.
Councilmember Devlin. You got to turn it on. You got to push the button. Yep, there you go.
A general question. Up until 2017, and I left the legislature at the end of 2017, I'd been appointed to a special group by the National Conference of State Legislators that looked at long-term nuclear storage issues. Of course, at that time, Yucca Mountain had fallen through. They were looking at some kind of interim storage, but that process was going to take a decade or more. I saw the casks on another nuclear facility, and from everything I read, it's a relatively safe way to store nuclear waste. But do we know if anything has to be done 50 years or 100 years down the road? Are the casks, can they last forever?
Well, that's a good question. So just to take a step back, you're right, Member Devlin, every nuclear power plant in the country, of which there are 90 or so operating nuclear power plant, and a handful of decommissioned plants like the Trojan site, the spent fuels is stored on site, that there's nowhere else for it to go. So it sits at the site of the operating reactors or decommissioned reactors. I would expect there is a lifespan to it's really concrete and steel that encases those casks. They're probably, and they're out in the weather. It is a long lifespan, and that is, I would expect to be part of a security plan, is a regular inspection, a physical inspection of those casks themselves to look for deterioration on the concrete or the encasing. And perhaps over decades, perhaps it would be necessary to change or upgrade or perhaps just redo the physical casings of the spent fuel. There is, as you can imagine, on the broader picture, and I've worked with the NCSL, the National Council of State Legislatures, and they have a nuclear policy working group that I've talked to a few times. There is little movement on the national front. I probably didn't expect to talk about spent nuclear fuel storage repositories this session, but here we are. There is little movement towards actually locating a facility in the country, but there is a working group sponsored by the U.S. Department of Energy. US DOE has it's a process for a process. That's actually what it is, for what they call consent-based siting of a permanent repository, of an interim repository. That's actually what a part of the key words is. The interim repository is what they're looking at right now. I'm not sure why they would do a two-step approach. It implies that they would have an interim repository and sometime in the future there'd be another repository somewhere else. That seems like a strange idea, but that process is, excuse me, pretty early in the stages. We at the state of Oregon, so I also serve as staff to the Oregon Hanford Cleanup Board, OHCB. That board submitted a comment letter to the US DOE when they were accepting comments on their consent-based siting process, as much as anything to remind the feds that US DOE, that Oregon has a keen interest because we have this spent nuclear fuel still stored in our state from the former Trojan site. We have a keen interest in not locating that geologic repository at the Hanford site in Washington, which had previously been considered but eliminated off a list, but it was in the top 3 of shortlisted facilities. And perhaps furthermore, simply to continue doing that work because it is of national importance to find a permanent home for the nation's nuclear waste.
Since my discussions were similar 6 or 7 years ago.
Things change
I
very
can tell
slowly in
about
that
the
field.
level of progress.
Yeah.
Well, and Councilmember Devlin, to help respond to your question, I think shortly before you came on the council, the timeframe, there was a deadline with which to move that spent nuclear material off site. That was extended because there is no interim or permanent repository. And so that happened, I believe, last year, where the NRC had already done it and council followed through and also approved an extension of the usage of those casks and the monitoring and maintenance of them, because as Max said, they do break down over time.
I was just wondering because that waste must have been already, given when that plant closed down and when they could move it out of the pools, it must have already been in existence. The casks probably have been, they might be even on their 3rd decade now.
Yeah. It's not unique across the country,
Yeah.
And even the world, but it is something that should be
Maybe
monitored and maintained, that for sure.
So if basically this was left on the side, if you agree to appoint Mr. Reese to go physically inspect the documents and then come back and report to council, then really this is the action item. So At the time that we were putting together the timeline, we didn't realize that this would be a vote. I don't know that it's absolutely required, but it's helpful. I think it's probably the importance of this type of thing lends itself to the, I think, justification for a vote. That's why it's not in your timeline. And if you agree, that's why I have the motion language on the slide.
Chair Farrell.
Yes, Councilmember Condon.
Cindy Condon, for the record, I'm prepared to make that motion.
Yes, please.
I move that the council appoint Mark Reese, the department's radiological emergency planning coordinator with the Nuclear Safety and Emergency Preparedness Division, to inspect the modifications to the security programs for the independent spent fuel storage installation at the former site of the Trojan Nuclear Power Plant and report back to the council and the director.
Second.
Thank you for that motion. Councilmember Deflin has made a second of that motion. Do we have any further questions or conversation? Hearing none, Mr. Secretary, please call the roll.
Harry Chalktooth. Ann Byer.
Yes.
Cindy Condon.
Yes.
Richard Devlin.
Yes.
Marcy Grail.
Yes.
Kent Howe.
Yes.
Motion carries, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Thank you very much to everyone, and we will look forward to hearing back on this issue.
I have more in my secretary report, if that is okay, Madam Chair.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
And I'm seeing at the time is 1:22, and so my apologies for those who are on the line for the public hearing. This is going a little bit longer, and not just due to the conversation we just had. I think it was a little bit more than I anticipated. So my apologies for those who are waiting to testify. But we do have some important information. So next, I want to talk to you about a Department of Environmental Quality noise rulemaking. So in 2020, Governor Brown signed Executive Order 2004. And what that did is it directed state agencies to take actions to reduce and regulate greenhouse gas emissions. As part of that, many agencies said, hey, we're going to look to do these things. The Department of Energy was no different. We had a series of tasks. And within, the department, we, the siting division, had our own. One of them was to look at the possibility of making changes or having council adopt your own noise rules. And so we spent some time looking at those opportunities. We rejected the idea of coming up with your own rules because of some conflicts that I won't get into between the DEQ noise rules. And so in the end, we've come up with a proposal. We've met with DEQ staff. They've agreed to take on this rulemaking, and it's solely related to solar PV. So it's noise related to solar PV. Because this is really more related to our projects or our jurisdictional projects, your jurisdictional projects, we're going to do much of the staffing on it. But because of the nature of it, which I'm going to describe momentarily, we don't believe it'll take that much effort. It will take some effort, absolutely, but we don't think it'll take a significant. So to go back in time a little bit to give you a little bit of framework for these changes, in 2004, DEQ, or in this case, the Environmental Quality Commission, because they're the ones who actually adopt the rules, made changes to the noise rules specifically related to wind projects. So these changes created some flexibility in the siting of wind facilities with regards to noise, but still maintained important thresholds so people wouldn't be impacted negatively by potential noise increases. The two primary things that those noise rules did was they allowed for an assumed ambient background baseline noise level of 26 dBA. Unless there is particular evidence in the record to show that that is higher. Now, the importance of that is, if you're going to hire a noise consultant to go out there and set up all of the kind of equipment and do that ambient noise monitoring, it takes time and it's expensive. And so what this does is it allowed the developer to use an assumed ambient noise level, and that's the 26 dBA. So, and again, that was specific to wind, not anybody else. Also, it allowed for noise sensitive properties. And these are homes, schools, hospitals, basically places of human kind of habitation, that if the increase is more than 10 dBA based on monitoring and modeling, that you would have to get a waiver from the landowner. So means that even if, they can go from 26 to 30, 5, but if they go to 36, they would have to get waivers. And so it still allowed some control by those adjacent landowners, if they chose to sign the waiver or not sign the waiver. Now, the one thing that's important about that is there is a not to exceed maximum threshold, which causes, potential harm to humans. And that table exists in the rules. That was not changed. You still can't go, even if somebody was willing to sign a waiver, you can't go above that. So there's a not to exceed amount. So again, that was done in 2004 for wind facilities. We've used that consistently since then. It's been included in many of your reviews for wind facilities, where developers oftentimes for wind have chosen to do that because it's cheaper and easier, and again, still has the safeguards. And there are numerous occasions where people have signed waivers. So it's a system that has worked and, created some flexibility, but still safeguarded, public health and safety. Really what we're doing is we're proposing the same thing, just make this applicable to solar as well. Because, we want that same flexibility. It just doesn't exist right now. People can't do those things, even if they want to. So I think one element of this, which is important to clarify on the record, is many people ask, well, why are you even bothering with this? Because solar panels don't create noise. And that is true. But there are lots of equipment associated with industrial scale solar facilities that do create noise. And those include inverters, transformers, generator step-up transformers, transmission lines. And then if they have a battery storage system, the HVAC units associated with that. And through our process, our reviews, we have looked at that data. We have that data in our record, and the noise generated by those types of equipment range from 46 to 106 dBA at the point source. And the higher end of that well exceeds the not to exceed threshold. So they have the potential to create significant health issues for people from noise. So there is a need to review noise for solar facilities. There is a potential impact. But again, because this has been done for wind facilities, it would have the same value and the same safeguards. So that's why we're proposing that. So the idea is that we will create a rulemaking advisory committee. And the reason I haven't gone to you with this is it's an EQC, or Environmental Quality Commission. Tom has already solicited, interest in a rulemaking advisory committee. We will likely just show them in a one-time meeting, here's the draft rules, which is pretty surgical, making sure that there are no concerns or issues, or if somebody has a different idea on language. Then once that concludes, we would initiate that process, do a public comment period, a rulemaking hearing, and then ultimately we go to the Environmental Quality Commission with the potential to be adopted as early as May of next year. So, any questions?
Any
Councilmember
questions?
Cindy Condon for the record. Just maybe not related to this, but I'm just wondering, we do a lot of our work is an analysis of fish and wildlife, impacts on fish and wildlife. And this is just human.
Just human.
And nothing with, is there anything out there with respect to wildlife near solar wind facilities?
I mean, there can be. So when we look at those standards, there are, if you look at protected areas or recreation resources, there are noise elements to those. Those are not the DEQ noise rules. Those are, if you have a protected area or a recreation resource and some element of that, and say the management plan for that is, a quiet sort of setting, we would look at the potential impacts of noise from the facility to that. Similarly, we would, if there are, noise issues associated with, sensitive fish and wildlife habitat, we would work with ODFW regarding that. I'm not aware of any particularly that's occurred. Certainly, if ODFW, some, nesting species during certain times of the year that were very sensitive to noise, that would be something that could get included in our review. I'm making that up, but it's possible.
I just had the experience of hearing a report about, with actual figures for you can't go above a certain decibel level. So thank you.
Councilmember Byer.
Thank you. Just a quick question. The only project that I've been involved with that we really got into the noise standard was the B2H transmission line. And in that case, there was an allowance for mitigation to address the noise issues. Is that a component of the existing
Yeah.
wind? Okay, and then.
It's a component of the existing DEQ noise rules.
Okay, that was the question. So those could be rolled forward to solar as well
So
if necessary.
in this example for wind and what we're proposing
Yeah.
in solar, if you go above 10 PA, so you
Yeah.
assume 26 and you're say, at 27 and you got to go to the landowner, the landowner can negotiate.
Got it.
They could basically say, build me a sound wall, replace my windows, put insulation in, or just give me some money and I'll sign a waiver.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of then power within the hands of the particular landowner.
Good. I appreciate the effort to do this rulemaking and to kind of set that safe harbor for developers so they don't have to assess the ambient level, because that's got to be a tough charge. So I appreciate staff working with DEQ to address that issue. Thank you.
Next on my list is there is an existing battery energy storage system working group. So, as you are aware, most of our certainly solar facilities include a battery storage component. The use doesn't exist in statute or rule in the exclusive farm use zone. So for us, it's just a related and supporting facility by itself. It doesn't exist as an allowed use. So that's what the group is really looking at. At the end of the 2023 session, there was a bill, House Bill 2989 and the -2. There was an attempt, and so that's what this group is starting with, is that -2 amendment, and then having some conversation. So it's Representative Marsh from Ashland. She's the one who's leading it. And if there are agreements, her intent is to have this done during the 2024 short session. So this would be a statutory change. I'm going to give you a little background for those non-land use people. Really what they're looking at is the exclusive farm use zone. That's where most of our facilities are located. That's where I think the likelihood of most of these. There are 3 types of review uses within the exclusive farm use zone. The first, which isn't really a review use, it's a use by right, farming. You can farm in the exclusive farm use zone. You don't have to ask permission. You can just do it. There's no review. There's no questions about that. The next is what's referred to as a type 1 use. And so if you look at the statute in the exclusive farm use zone, it'll have type 1 and type 2. And the type 1 uses are very minimal review, and you're limited to what the statute includes. So the local governments cannot add additional requirements outside of some minimal public health and safety requirements. So there is some provision for that, but it's largely counties have to implement and council has to implement what is in that particular described use. Then you have the type 2 uses, which are conditional uses. There are then quite a few elements within the Land Conservation and Development Commission statutes and rules, and then local governments can add on whatever they want, likely. And so it's a much higher level of review. So there's been 2 meetings so far. The last meeting, I think there was some agreement that the battery energy storage should be listed under a certain acreage as a type 1 use and over a certain acreage as a type 2 use. They're still working through that. I think that's the best sort of idea. because there's this minimal level of review, and it probably makes sense that a really small scale battery storage project should have minimal review. But I mean, we're dealing with ones that are 30, 40 acres in size. That's a lot of land that's consumed by battery. So that probably justifies a higher level of review. They're still working through what those acreages would be, so that's still in process. But I think that's where it's going. The original bill it was only a type 1 use, no matter what size. There was no discussion. And then there was an opt-in to FSEC. So at the end of the last meeting, I had requested, I think a type 2 use justifiably can opt into FSEC. It's just like a wind facility or a solar facility, and if the developer wants to do that, that's fine. But a type 1 use, I kind of argued, you go from this incredibly minimal review to an FSEC level review. And I said, that's too big of a swing. I don't think that's a legitimate policy. That was what my argument was. We'll see how that moves forward, but that was the last that I had provided information on. Yes, Councilman Byer.
So these statutory changes would be to the land use statutes,
Yes.
not, thank you.
These would just be LCDC statutes. So, and there would be no outright, something over a certain size is FSEC. We would have no standalone battery storage in Oregon Revised Statute 469-311, which is the definition of energy facility. It would not add that to your authority,
Yep.
but there would be an
An
opt-in. And
opt-in.
again, as I have requested, just a type 2.
Great, thank you.
Okay. Oh, and then as part of that working group, I just thought I would share with you, since I pulled all this data from all of our facilities, to kind of show what are we seeing now. And so I'm going to run through this really quickly. You can see the type of different battery systems. There are 4 different types of battery systems. I think they're just still trying to perfect what's the best one. You can see, our first one was with a natural gas facility, but, most of them have been with either wind, solar, or a combination. They've been part of an original application. They've been split off, from applications. They've been added on through amendments, so varying permutations. You can see the full megawatt. So operational, we have 136 that are currently operational, 100 under construction, 373 approved but not yet begun construction, 3 megawatts or 3 gigawatts rather that are under review as part of another one. And then the 1100 megawatt was the Bonanza facility, which let their notice of intent expire, but they had proposed a very sizable battery storage. So looking at megawatts, you can see the range 6 to 1200 with the average of 285. Acreage 0.2 acres. That's the Fort Westward one for PGE, going up to 90 acres. Again, pretty sizable, with an average of 27. Next slide, please. Sorry, next slide, please. They're largely, there's 2 types of sort of ones. They're either done in shipping containers or shipping container type facilities, and you can see the sizes of those to buildings. So there's a lot of variation. And then the decommissioning costs that you have put on these for these approved facilities. So, 1,170,000 just for battery energy storage. So these are significant, and these aren't just, some little one shipping container. These are utility scale things that we're looking at here. And there's going to be a lot more as we move forward with this state and pretty much the United States and the world with renewable energy. Battery storage is a necessary component, so we will continue to see this. Okay. Getting there. So again, sorry, I'm taking way too long. I'm going to skip the next one. Go to the next slide, please. So Nancy reached out to everybody on the 2024 council meeting, got feedback. I don't need to linger on this, just to say I wanted to make sure that everybody saw it. We can share this out with you again if you don't have the particular dates, but these are the 2024 dates. And then lastly, November 17th is our next council meeting. It'll be a one-day meeting. in Salem in this room. We've already put together a draft agenda, sent it to Chair Grail. Chair Grail has approved it. So we'll provide more details moving forward on that. But we will have a November meeting. It'll be on the 17th and in this room. Okay. So there's any questions, we'll conclude and get to the main event, which is the rulemaking.
Excellent. Are there any questions? Hearing none, then we will move on to agenda item B, which is the excuse me, thank you, Secretary Cornett. We appreciate the report. The next agenda item is agenda item B, radioactive material enforcement rulemaking. This is a public hearing. We have Tom Jackman, the citing policy analyst and rules coordinator, Maxwell Woods, Assistant Director for Nuclear Safety and Emergency Preparedness, and Tom Cecilia Hanford, geologist. We turn the discussion over to the three of you to share this agenda item.
Thank you, Chair Graham. Good afternoon. My name is Thomas Jackman, and I will be serving as the council's hearing officer today. The purpose of this public hearing is to take comment on the rules proposed for the radioactive waste rules found in OAR 345 Division 50. No responses to public questions will be made during this hearing. The agency will review issues raised during the public comment period, and the hearing officer's report will contain responses. In addition to the opportunity to present comments at this hearing, anyone may submit written comments until 5 p.m. on October 27th, 2023, which is the close of the public comment period. Comments received after that time will not be reviewed or considered by the council unless the council decides to extend the public comment period for everyone. Each person wishing to comment orally at this hearing should complete one of the registration cards on the information table in the back and bring it up to me. I will use those cards to call each person when it is his or her turn to testify. When I call your name, please come forward, state your name and where you are from. If you represent an organization, please also state the name. You may then present your comments. If you have written material to enter into the record, please say so and try to summarize it. Give me a copy of that material if you have not already submitted it to the agency. For persons wishing to comment orally via WebEx, the instructions are the same, except that you will notify us that you wish to comment by raising your hands using the hand raise button in the WebEx interface or by pressing *3 on your phone if you are calling in. Press *3 or the raise hand button to lower your hand. Again, if you have written material to enter into the record, please say so and try to summarize it. Please also email me a copy of any written material at tom.jackman@energy.oregon.gov. Are there any questions about how the hearing will be conducted? Hearing none. This hearing is now in session and is being recorded to maintain a permanent record. Today is my name is Thomas Jackman and I'm the hearing officer. Today is October 19th and the time is 1:43 p.m. So the purpose of this hearing is to provide an opportunity for public comment on rules proposed for amendment by the Energy Facility Study Council regarding rules found in OAR 345 Division 50 concerning the disposal of radioactive waste. This rulemaking effort is the result of direction by the Oregon Legislature to Council to review and, as necessary, revise its rules to prevent the disposal of radioactive waste within the state of Oregon. The intent of this rulemaking is to implement practical changes to the rules that allow for easier implementation and remove impractical barriers to compliance while maintaining public health and safety. Reorganize the rules to reduce misinterpretation and increase clarity. Add a specific exemption to address the unique properties of certain wastes, and to create a process to reduce risk to workers at landfills and transfer stations. The council invites comments about whether other options should be considered for achieving the rules goals while reducing the negative impact on business. In addition to presenting oral comments at this hearing, anyone may submit written comments until 5 p.m. on October 27th, 2023, which is the close of the public comment period of this rulemaking. Send comments to or provide a hard copy to me. Comments received after 5 p.m. on October 27th, 2023 will not be reviewed or considered by the council unless the council decides to extend the public comment period for everyone. The council will not respond to questions during this hearing. After the close of the public comment period, I will prepare a report to council, which will be available from the council's website. I will begin taking comments now. Sure.
For the record, Todd Cornett, just one point of clarification. If council has questions or needs clarification on any comments, you're allowed to do that. Not a basically back and forth. It's not a conversation. People testifying can't ask you questions, but if you have any sort of clarification that you're seeking, that's allowable.
Also, we have our experts in the back here, so if you have any questions related to any comments you hear that you want instant feedback from, we are here to serve. So we received one request for comment in person here today, and I hope I get your name right, from Andrea Few. Oh, dang it, not a 50-50. All right, please come forward and present your comment.
Good afternoon, Chair Grail, Vice Chair Howe, members of the council. I'm Andrea Fogg. I'm the Governmental Affairs Director for the Oregon Refuse and Recycling Association. Thank you very much for the opportunity to come and provide some public comments today. Also, I'd like to point out on the phone, I've got some experts as well. So Andy Lombardo with PermFix, who is a radioactive waste expert. Jennifer Stuber, the General Manager of Dry Creek Landfill, and also Trent Carpenter, the General Manager of Southern Oregon Sanitation. So ORA is here in support of the proposed one rules today. This is a very important issue for us. ORA represents, as an association statewide, on behalf of cities and counties, our members provide essential public services. So they collect the refuse and recycling, they provide processing for these materials, also the materials recovery facilities, landfills, which are important to this conversation, and also composting facilities. And so we have been actively engaged in this rulemaking process. I served on the Rulemaking Advisory Committee as well as Andy Lombardo, and it has been a very thoughtful and deliberative process. And we just want to say thank you to Max and the Toms and all of the team at Odo who have spent a lot of time on this. It's been an over 2-year process. And so this is something, as I said, that is a priority. It is the highest priority for our members to protect the health and safety of Oregonians and the workers in the solid waste industry. And this first set of proposed rules before you, we think accomplishes that. And I'll turn it over to any questions that you may have. And again, I have some experts if those are questions that are on that level. Okay, great. Well, thank you again for your time and this process. Oh, I'm sorry. Councilor
Not
Condon.
really a question. I just want to thank you for your participation in the RAC and really your feedback on that experience.
Thank you. As I said, it has been a great, I think, group of stakeholders represented on the Rulemaking Advisory Committee. And again, the staff has really worked hard, I think, to bring a proposal before you. Thank you.
Nancy, are there anybody who raised their hand on the WebEx? Sure. So again, if you're on the phone or on the webinar, you can either raise your hand if you're on the webinar, or if you're on the phone, press *3 to raise your hand and make a comment. And Secretary Cronin, I don't know how long you want to give them. Sure. All right, go ahead.
Mr. Carpenter, you are unmuted if you'd like to go ahead and make your comment.
Thank you. I appreciate your guys' time on letting me have comment. My name is Trent Carpenter. I'm with Southern Oregon Sanitation. We service around 30,000 residential customers in the Josephine Jackson area and have around 60,000 people that come through our transfer stations. These rules are important and they need to be looked at. And we support the changes because a few times already in the last 12 months, we've had to stop trailers because they had an isotope that was used in a medical procedure. And we only have a certain number of trailers. And if we have those all locked out, suddenly we have to shut transfer stations down. So, vitally important to us. We want to make sure everybody's safe. We want to make sure everybody, and matter of fact, we've made $100,000 investment in RIDS to be able to tell what the isotopes are so that we don't send anything or do anything that we shouldn't. But on the same note, we can't have we do have a finite number of trailers to be able to process material. And sometimes people decide not to follow the rules, and current rules prevent us from being able to actually landfill that material for months at end. So I could take any questions, but I do support the changes, and I think they're in the betterment for all of those concerned. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Carpenter. If anybody else wishes to make a comment, feel free to raise your hand in the app or press star 3. Okay, I have called the names of everyone who has submitted registration cards or raised their hands in WebEx. If there is no one else who wishes to comment, the hearing is adjourned. Thank you. Unless you have any questions. Nope.
All right. Thank you very much, Tom.
Madam Chair, if I may, I just want to reiterate, prior comments. So just appreciate all the staff work on this. This is a complicated issue. We know there's a lot of, interest in this, and I just appreciate everybody who's taken the time, particularly on the Rulemaking Advisory Committee, to provide feedback. So we just appreciate all the time and effort from everybody. So thank you.
Thank you for those comments. I think it's really critical that everyone does recognize that when people do get together and engage and share their perspectives, we end up with good results. So I'd like to echo that. Thanks. All righty. Well, then our next agenda item is agenda item C, and it is the public comment period. And this is an information item. And so this time is reserved for the public to address the council regarding any item within council jurisdiction that is not otherwise closed for comment. I am going to turn over to Nancy and see, first of all, do we have anyone in the room who wishes to speak? And then we can get to the phone. So Nancy, if you don't mind, I will ask for your help on this one.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do not see anyone in the room. I will go ahead and just reiterate how to comment if you're interested. So if you're on the WebEx, press star 3 to raise your hand to make a comment. And then when you're finished, you're going to press star 3 to lower your hand after you finish. If you are participating on the phone, excuse me, that was on the phone. If you're just on the web, you're going to open the participant list, hover over your name, and click the raise your hand icon. Madam Chair, there are no hands raised at this time.
Thank you. I'm going to reiterate the call for public comments. If anyone wishes to speak, please let your intentions be known.
There are no hands raised at this time.
Thank you. I'm going to say last call for an opportunity for public comment. If you would like to speak, please raise your hand. Well, then I'm going to close the comment period, the public comment period. The time is now 1:55 and this information item has concluded. Thank you for your help, Nancy. Okay, well, I will ask council if they have any additional comments or concerns that they would like to raise during this meeting.
Madam Chair, just a question for the record.
Yes, please, Councilmember Devlin.
It might be good to do this publicly. I have two different schedules for this group meeting in November, one with 1 day and one with 2 days. Which is it?
Yep. Thanks, Councilmember Devlin. We always set, Nancy, can you go back to the 2024 meeting dates?
There you go.
I think you went past it. Yep, there we go. So this is an example of what we do, you know, at the beginning of the year, the end of the year. We set dates, which are in every month, and then we give a 2-day, which is a Thursday and a Friday. Those are placeholders. So we always set the placeholders up, and approximately 5 weeks out, we try to confirm whether or not we don't have an agenda, we can release the dates, or whether we have an agenda and whether that's a 2-day meeting or a 1-day meeting. And so this is why we have these on the schedule, but to truly answer your question, we only have a 1-day meeting for November. We had a placeholder for 2 days, like we always do, but when we confirm it, which we haven't done yet with Chair Grail, she approved it, but we haven't reached out to council members. So that's why when you heard me say it today in my secretary report, that's likely the first you heard that. So it will be November 17th, which is the Friday. It's a 1-day meeting. We'll probably be in that typical 8:30 to 1-ish timeframe is what I anticipate. But we haven't fleshed out the agenda yet to know what, how long it'll take, but it'll only be 1 day. It was a long-winded answer to your question, but I thought the framework might help.
All right.
For the first day.
Are there any other questions or comments? Well, then, I'm sorry I was not able to be present. I'm in Yakima. I appreciate everyone for traveling in to participate in today's meeting, both virtually and in person. Thank you to staff for, as always, having information prepared so we can fulfill our obligations as council. If there are no further questions, the time is now 1:58 p.m. and the October 19th, 2023 meeting of the Energy Facility Siting Council is now adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Safe travels and have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you, Chair Grail.
This is the list.